بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In this final video of term number 2, we will be discussing the rules pertaining to iltiqa'u sakinain. In English, that is the meeting of two sukoons, and more precisely, the meeting of two sukoons across two separate words. What that means is, the first word ends in a letter which is sakin, whilst the following word begins in a letter which is sakin. In the Arabic language, such an instance cannot occur, and if we do find a case where two letters which are sakin following each other, then it must be dealt with in one of two ways. The way it is dealt with depends on the type of letter which holds the first sukoon. So, if the first sakin letter happens to be a letter of mad, i.e. alif or waw or ya, then we deal with the meeting of the two sukoons by simply removing that letter of mad. Take a look at this example. Here we have the word qalu ending in the letter waw, followed by the word Allahum. Remember, hamzatul wasl is not pronounced when continuing. So, the following letter is actually the lam, and this lam is sakin. So instead of saying وَإِذْ قَالُوا اللَّهُمْ, we say وَإِذْ قَالُوا اللَّهُمْ, removing the waw completely and going from the lam in qalu straight to the lam in Allahum. Here's another example. We see the word qala ending in an alif, followed by the word alhamdu. Again, ending in an alif and then followed by a hamzatul wasl, which we don't pronounce because we're continuing, and then landing on a lam which is sakin. So again, we have two sukoons, one after the other. What are we going to do? We are going to remove the alif because it is a letter of mad. So instead of saying qala alhamdulillah, we say qala alhamdulillah. And one final example of this is afillahi shak. Here, the word afi ends in the letter ya, and it's followed by hamzatul wasl, which again we don't pronounce for the obvious reason that we are continuing, and then followed by a lam which is sakin. So we've got the ya which is sakin followed by the lam which is sakin. What are we going to do? We are going to remove or avoid pronouncing the ya. So instead of saying afillahi shakkun, we say afillahi shakkun, going straight from the fa to the lam. Afil, not afil, afillahi shak. We now know how to deal with two sukoons meeting when the first sakin letter is a letter of mad. But what do we do when that is not the case, i.e. we have a consonant? Well, what we do is instead of removing the letter, we actually apply a harakah. Usually this is a kasra, but in some cases it can also be a dhamma or a fatha. Now luckily for you, you don't need to worry about which harakah it is because that is already written for you in the mushaf. But it's important that we understand this concept. Let's take a look at some examples. إِذِ اسْتَسْقَى. إِذِ اسْتَسْقَى. Now the origin of the first word is actually idh, with the dhal being sakin. It's then followed by hamzatul wasl, which we of course do not pronounce in this case, and then a sin which is sakin. So we've got a dhal which is sakin and a sin which is sakin. And the way we get rid of the meeting of the two sukoons is by applying a harakah on the first sakin letter. In this case, we apply a kasra, and that's why in the mushaf it's written إِذِ اسْتَسْقَى, when indeed the origin is actually إِذْ اسْتَسْقَى وَإِذِ اسْتَسْقَى. Another example is min Allah. Again, the origin of the first word is actually min, noon being sakin, but because it is followed by hamzatul wasl, which we do not pronounce, and then a lam which is sakin, that noon, that sakin noon, is gotten rid of by applying a fatha onto it. So it is now pronounced min Allah, min Allah. Another example is alaykumul qital. Again, the first word ends in a meme which is actually sakin. The word is alaykum in its origin. It's then followed by Hamzatul Wasl, which again we do not pronounce in this case, then a lam which is sakin. Because we have a meme which is sakin, followed by a lam which is sakin, we get rid of the first sukoon by applying a harakah. In this case, we apply a dhamma because it is mimul jam' and it is pronounced alaykumul qital. And these are 3 examples with the 3 different harakat for you to be aware of. So you may now be thinking, why do I need to know the rule if the harakah is always drawn in the mushaf? Well, simply that isn't always the case. So when a word ends in some kind of tanween, whether that be fathatain, dhammatain, or even kasratain, and is followed by then a word that begins with a second letter, this is still the meeting of 2 sukoons. That's because, remember, tanween produces the same sound as a noon sakin. Take this as an example. Here we have the word nuhun followed by the word ibnahu. Of course, the Hamzatul Wasl is not pronounced, and so the following word starts with the letter ba, and the ba is sakin. Nuhun ends in a tanween, i.e. a noon sakin. So what do we do here to get rid of the meeting of the 2 sukoons? We apply a kasra, and we recite it as follows. Nuhun ibnahu, Nuhun ibnahu, just like that. Another example is mathalan al-qawm. Here we've got the word mathalan ending in fathatain, same sound as noon sakin, followed by al-qawm. Again, Hamzatul Wasl is not pronounced and the lam is sakin. So 2 sukoons, one after the other. What do? We apply a kasra on the first sukoon, and so it is pronounced mathalan al-qawm, mathalan al-qawm. Finally, just one last bit of advice on this topic is that when the harakah is applied to the first sakin letter, often this harakah is not pronounced clearly enough by students, and this is a mistake that I've found many times. So in these cases, just make sure to pronounce the harakah appropriately. إِذِ اسْتَسْقَى, showing the kasra properly, not إِذِ اسْتَسْقَى. عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالِ, not عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالِ. Being very clear with the harakah, and this makes a big difference to your recitation.